Hello, glad to have you back today. First of all, I want to thank my entire community for the numerous comments on the last video, which made it clear to me once again that many are currently in a very difficult phase, struggling with intense ascension symptoms. And today I want to delve deeper into what forces are currently active from a shamanic perspective and compare this with a Native American story, which many are experiencing right now. My name is Riedel, and I have been following the shamanic path for almost 20 years, initiated in the tradition of the Incas and the tradition of the Blackfoot. I am always impressed by how timeless and relevant shamanic wisdom is, especially in our current times. And this reminds me of the shamanic prophecy that time is accelerating so enormously, similar to a brook swelling into a rushing stream. And if we try to hold on to the shore, we will be pulled down by the very strong and powerful current. And all we can do is inevitably let go and completely surrender to this gigantic and unstoppable current of change, which will lead us to new shores. And the interesting thing is that I even watched a documentary about the universe, which proves that the universe is now expanding faster and faster. And of course, we are also subject to other cosmic influences, such as gravitational waves from black holes that are then generated. This was also indeed new to me, that it creates a significant effect on the quality of space-time, and thus space and time can shift. And of course, we are also subject to normal phenomena like solar storms, planetary influences, and the Earth's vibrational frequency. Yes, in short, the ascension energies that are reaching us today are many times stronger than in previous years. And everyone is at times even ruthlessly confronted with the need to constantly adapt to these influences. Yes, and as a result, our development speed has significantly increased, allowing us to achieve many things in a very, very short time and attract new opportunities into our lives that previously seemed impossible for us. The downside is that we are confronted with what is tied to the old world, and we are in fact practically forced to constantly reinvent ourselves. And many are currently going through intense processes, as I explained at the beginning and as I have read in the comments. For example, with feelings like exhaustion, hopelessness, headaches, dizziness, or other physical symptoms, or a sense of just not being able to make it and strong self-doubt, even though you may have achieved a lot externally, some things just come up for no reason. And what many don't know is that we are also making a significant shift with our consciousness, in fact. Because our consciousness wants to expand, just like the universe, and that is a completely normal process in development. And usually such a major shift happens around the ages of 28 and 35, for example, or even between 49 and 56. Don't hold me exactly to these numbers. Yes, so that's roughly a guideline which I have also experienced myself. Exactly in this period, I was 30, when a huge shift happened to me. And now again, between 49 and 56, that's where I am right now, right in the middle, right now. Yes, and during this time we experience a transition, first from adolescence to adulthood in the initial phase, and then the other transition is from adulthood to the elder status. And during this phase you might be shaken up tremendously, and it really gets down to the nitty-gritty. Many also go through what is called the dark night of the soul or the dark night of the ego. That means the old life is falling away, and the new one is not quite tangible. I've talked about this several times before, but it reminds me of a Native American story, a Native American legend of the eagle, and I would like to share that here now. Yes, when an eagle reaches the mature age of 30 or even 40 years, over the years its feathers become thicker and heavier, its claws grow longer, and its beak begins to change. And then, during this phase, he indeed initially struggles to fly at all because he keeps getting progressively heavier, and he goes hunting more and more, less and less, because it costs him more energy than ever before. Yes, and it might also be the case, if I apply this to life, that you might be stuck in your life where this old life, which you might be used to, is costing you more energy than you ever realized before. Shortly thereafter, he is barely able to fly at all and survives only on the leftovers and what the other eagles leave for him. And during this quasi-transformation period, his beak continues to grow gradually and slowly until he is eventually unable to eat. And this phase can last several months. During this time, he is taken care of by other eagles, as eagles are also very social with each other. And then it may be that he is completely and utterly exhausted and drained. And then at some point there comes a phase where he has to make a decision, either to die or to shed all of it, the heavy feather coat, the too long claws, and the too long beak as well. Yes, and then it might happen that at some point he eventually gets the impulse to shed his entire plumage, in time. He shakes himself and plucks out all his feathers, and then he begins to grind his beak on a sharp rock for hours. He does the same with his claws. And then it might just be that he looks like a plucked chicken, completely exhausted here as well. And this phase naturally takes longer. It can naturally take 1 or 2 months for new feathers to grow, so that he is even able to fly again. But once he has overcome this phase, he will fly faster than ever before. He has the experience of an old eagle between 30 and 40 years old, but he is rejuvenated, so he might be able to live another 30 years. And this image or story is incredibly very impactful for me because many people are truly stuck in their old lives. I would describe it as the heavy feather cloak being similar to the heavy energy that surrounds us, the old life that no longer fits you, and yet you might still be trying to maintain it with an enormous amount of energy. And then it might happen that you find yourself stuck in a job or perhaps even in a relationship that seemed great at first, but ultimately you indeed realize that it just drains an excessive amount of your energy. The same can, of course, happen with a circle of friends, so you might even start to question your entire life because it may feel hollow and empty at that moment, and during this phase you might also feel like you need to leave your old life behind. And here's the catch: you don't know where to go. To an unknown land, a place where you've never been before. And as soon as you start to enter this unknown land or embark on the journey, it might cause you enormous fears and bring up significant self-doubt about whether you are really doing the right thing. Because just like the eagle, which indeed completely rejuvenates itself, this moment is like a rebirth for you as well. And I believe this is the critical phase for many, where a lot of people find themselves now, that we are almost forced to recognize everything that truly weighs you down in your life, what really drags you down. Yes, and then decide that you can also let go of it piece by piece, so that in the next phase of life we can realign our lives with full new strength. And now I would like to ask you a question. If you are completely honest with yourself, what is it that really weighs you down, that you need to let go of, if you give yourself permission right now? Then you can imagine your life with all the commitments, dependencies, and responsibilities you have taken on for yourself or for others. Yes, imagine now, in an exercise, pressing the so-called reset button and being able to live your life completely anew, as if you were newly born. Yes, what kind of life would you like to lead, and where does your heart call you if you now give yourself permission to listen more deeply to your heart? Yes, if you want, you can also pause here for a moment and really give yourself these two answers. Once, what weighs you down, what you want to avoid, and once, where you want to go. I recently asked a woman this exact question during a get-to-know-you conversation, and she honestly replied that she doesn't know what she carries in her heart, that it seems to be only in her head, something she had imagined. Yes, and then I told her, what are you imagining in your head, Yusand? That you just let it flow here, maybe even for yourself right now. And then she told me that she wanted to help other people as a healer and also live a free life by the sea. Yes, just to live as she truly is. But in the same breath, she told me that I was the first person she had ever told this to, and that she was actually ashamed of wanting to achieve something like this. Yes, and I am also very, very familiar with this feeling and this inner dialogue with a so-called inner critic and inner doubter. The one who wants to talk you out of it again. Because I have experienced this myself and I see it over and over again with my clients, that the dials of the self-doubter are turned up so high that we are not at all able to feel what we truly carry in our hearts, what we really want to align ourselves with, or in other words, who we truly are. To keep the conversation going, I then told her, if you feel like it, we can do a short exercise. I would like to invite you to simply accept, just for a moment, that if you were to live this life, you would just close your eyes and imagine people coming to you whom you help, and they leave very happy and satisfied, thanking you for having changed their lives in the right direction and helping them to make that change. And this wonderful life on the beach, which you can also lead here, if you just allow yourself in this exercise to dive deeper into it, what does it do to you? And then came the response that it makes them very incredibly happy, indeed incredibly satisfied. She feels she has arrived in herself for the first time, because that is exactly what I want to invite you to do. Now, if you imagine that deep within your heart there is a strong call, maybe even a clear vision, you can simply allow it in this exercise to show itself more clearly and to dive even deeper into it. What it specifically does to you, you can write to me in the comments below, as I am very interested in that as well. That is exactly the position of the eagle who considers, do I die now? Yes. Is life over, or do I decide to live completely anew? And many are exactly at this crossroads. It's also a completely natural process, as I've mentioned before, because consciousness is shifting again. And then it might be that completely different values become the focus of your life. What I have also observed in many conversations, for example, is that before, for instance, material values were very important, like success, security, and so on. And then suddenly inner values become more important, like spirituality, yes, truly living oneself, being independent, being freedom, not having to work so much anymore, yes, and so on, yes. So indeed, everything can truly change if you trust this process and follow this call. But in this example, it becomes clear to me again how strongly we are attached with all the old roles, with all the old dependencies, and above all, of course, with the inner critic that keeps us exactly there. We often lack the strength to free ourselves from such situations because we have already expended so much energy just to maintain our old lives. And then it might be that there are two options. One, you say, okay, I've had enough. Yes, I'm changing this now. I don't want to suffer anymore. Or the other option is that you just keep going until you are completely, absolutely, and utterly empty. So similar to burnout, I have also had clients who couldn't move at all because they had such severe weakness attacks. And by then, you are ready to change or let go of what truly burdens you in your life and truly, deeply burdens you. And of course, everyone is different. What I want to tell you with this is that you can give yourself permission to realign your life with what you truly are deep in your heart. And to give you another picture, imagine your life, especially if you are currently in a crisis, as being similar to being in a valley in your mind. You can only see what is present in this valley, what you can perceive from this perspective, and you only consider possible what you can see from this standpoint. This is completely normal, as you can't perceive more than that. And that represents your old life. And now, if you imagine you were living a life, for example, as a shamanic healer or in a happy partnership on equal footing that completely fulfills you, yes. Or even professionally, that you have completely fulfilled yourself, where you might not be at the moment, yes. Then this vision represents what you truly desire, that you deeply and wholeheartedly desire, a hill or a mountain outside this valley, yes. So as soon as you start wanting to leave this valley, even just thinking about it is enough, yes, your threshold guardians will become active. Specifically, this means massive existential fears, self-doubt, fear of failure, fear of being ostracized by society, not being accepted anymore, that others might ridicule you, and so on. These are different things for everyone, and this is the protection program that wants to keep you in your old world. And that's why it's called a protection program. It wants to protect you so that you can survive. So, in your old world, it has worked so far that you survive, but you cannot realize yourself. This means that your consciousness and your heart are already capable of recognizing your vision, which is essentially outside of your valley. And during this change, during this process of transformation, it is absolutely completely normal that when you start wanting to change, these threshold guardians become active and you are confronted with them. Many give up at this point because they haven't learned how to handle it properly. Of course, there are also different categories. And maybe you know the feeling when you imagine that you have decided to change your life. Yes, you also feel that something greater is waiting for you. I also feel within me that I want to follow my path. Yes. And then you might take the first steps, and then the threshold guardians become active, perhaps even coupled with your environment. And then you go back to your old life, and maybe you've even made several attempts already, perhaps. And that's exactly what can often wear you down, the belief that it's impossible to get out of it. But there are various things you can do about it. So it means that it is good for you if you, for example, also look for a role model. Those who have achieved it with a similar story to yours, who have overcome exactly what you now want to overcome in their lives and challenges, because then it is possible. There are no excuses. There are no excuses that it is not possible. And that's what we often convince ourselves of. I know this all too well from my own experiences, convincing myself that I had really done everything possible to achieve this or that. And back then, when I had a different coach, it was about business matters. He asked very specifically, and I can ask you the same now, what exactly did you do? So really list it out for me. And then I have to admit that it actually wasn't that much, that I didn't do everything possible. And that is essentially the illusion of the mind, which always tries to hold you back and pull you back into the old life. And that is a normal mechanism. That's why, in my opinion, it's important from the current perspective to get help if you really want to change your life concretely, because these can be very massive threshold guardians that hold you back. And this image fits very well. The eagle, so exhausted that it can no longer eat, everything is too long, it is too heavy. Yes, and similarly, if you apply this to your life, it might be you are in a phase where you feel your old life is a burden. Just barely. You might somehow manage it. And you might also feel that it's all too much for you. And maybe you can make it through today, but maybe you won't be able to make it through tomorrow. So you're already completely exhausted. Yes, and it's also important that we go through this process. This is a very, very important process because at some point everyone reaches their own threshold of pain, where we then possess the emotional maturity to want and need to change the situation. Yes, to stay with me now, the most intense upheaval really happened when I was 30, because no one helped me then. I had no mentor and I had no idea what was going on. And there I was, deep in this transformation phase, where I completely questioned my old life with all its values, why I was even doing anything here, and searched for a new meaning of life. And then I was thrown back to the essentials. What was truly important to me? And maybe you can ask yourself that exact question right now. What is truly important to you if you let go of all the dependencies, all the obligations, all the must-dos, and just say, okay, if I really scaled back to a basic level, what kind of life would I lead? What kind of life would I want to live? And then reinvent yourself. That's basically what might be happening right now. For some it's dramatic, yes, for some it's dramatic, and for others it's more gradual. It's naturally different for everyone. And if at this moment you have a clarity, yes, to say, okay, that was the same for me. I then had the clarity. I want to become a spiritual teacher. I want to follow this path now. Then really draw the consequence from it and act accordingly, because the fear of the new path is still there and the fear is there. But when the old life becomes so uncomfortable and unbearable, when the pain becomes greater than the fear, only then are you ready to change your situation, because you then say, no matter what happens, I can't take it anymore. And I can speak from personal experience and from my years of work with my clients that it simply takes time to free yourself from your inner critic. So turning down the volume of the inner critic. This is a process and involves developing an inner foundation of self-confidence, inner strength, self-love, and the necessary clarity. I also incorporate exactly that into my very shamanic mentoring and shamanic online training. And for that, as already mentioned, it takes time. Change is not an event, but a process. And many are under the misconception that at some point someone will flip a switch for them and life will automatically get better. And that's exactly not how it is. It takes time. Give yourself time, plenty of time. Because why do so many people always fall back into their old lives? In other words, they have made attempts and then they fall back into their old lives again. Once I mentioned that it is due to the gatekeepers, but the main issue lies in their old environment, in the old community. And that's why it's so crucial when you truly decide to take a new path, that you surround yourself with the right community that is indeed on the same path as you, actually. Maybe you have experienced it yourself, that you made several attempts and then just fell back again. It was the same for me too, until I realized that I should accept help, that it is not a weakness to accept help, that it is not a weakness to seek a mentor who can help you because he is a professional and knows exactly what processes occur and, most importantly, has the right methods, or can help you gain a different perspective. Because we are also so limited by our perspective, as we have only learned to use and take this one perspective, I completely understand if you are currently going through a difficult phase in your life. It's not about constantly complaining or perhaps feeling sorry for yourself or sinking into a victim mentality. It's about having the courage, even when fear is present, and showing the determination to genuinely want to change your life seriously. Similar to the hero who indeed embarks on the so-called hero's journey. The hero who starts out, yes, he doesn't know anything yet, he only has the courage or maybe is even forced to leave his life, to leave his village, to save the family, to save the beautiful maiden, depending on what it is, yes. And along the way he encounters challenges that help him grow. It's only when he returns that he is so strong and has managed to overcome everything. But he doesn't know this beforehand, which is why he is also afraid. And that's exactly what it is if you want to have courage. Courage is always coupled with fear. Doing it anyway, despite the fear, doing the things that are necessary to grow, ultimately, yes. And I had to learn that over the years, yes, to take complete responsibility for my life as well. No matter what is currently happening in my life, where you might seemingly have no control, everything lies in your decisions and also in your resonance. You have chosen to live this life, consciously or unconsciously. And you also have a resonance within yourself. Specifically, it means that you also carry heavy themes within you, such as those you might have experienced in childhood, for example. If you have experienced lack, yes, no matter in which area of life, and you are not willing to go into it, yes, if you are not willing to look into it and maybe transform it, then you will keep attracting the things you don't want into your resonance over and over again. Then you will continue to attract this lack, yes, because it is still in your resonance, even though you wish for something else. Yes, these are the mechanisms behind it, which many people are not aware of at all, what lies beneath or how they can realign themselves. And those were my thoughts on this topic. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to share it with others or share it on Newsand. And if you want more insights or a glimpse into my daily routines, just follow me on Instagram. The link is in the description below. See you next time. Take care. Bye. Goodbye.